So, like many of you, I'm sure, I watched Pixar's newest movie, Luca, a few weeks ago, and I fell head over heels in love with it. I was absolutely enchanted, and I think it might be their best movie since Coco, and it might even be better than that. I'm not quite sure. After I saw the movie, I started reading reviews, and one of the most common comparisons being made in the reviews, other than the Call Me By Your Name comparisons, was a comparison to Studio Ghibli films. A lot of people said that this was the closest Pixar has ever come to making a Ghibli movie. I was pretty intrigued by that comparison. I made the comparison myself in my review, but I was also like, okay, what specifically makes Luca like a Studio Ghibli film? I know it kind of vibes like one, but what's the specific quality that makes it feel like Ghibli? We'll come back to that, but one of the things that I really appreciated about Luca that made it stand out from some of Pixar's more recent entries for me was that it wasn't attempting to be something that it was not. And it also wasn't attempting to be like, you know, something that was inherently Pixar. Many of Pixar's recent movies have been, I don't know, questing after the Pixar existentialism that they became known for in their early days. Something like Soul, to me, I enjoyed, but I also felt like there were moments in that movie that were tailor-made to be Pixar moments, right? It was a moment that made you question the meaning of life and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, all right, y'all are really trying to be Pixar right now. Versus something like Luca, I really respected because it wasn't going after some sort of crazy, profound existentialism. It was just kids having fun, and that was what was great about it. The director said that one of the biggest inspirations for Luca was the movie Stand By Me, which has long been a massive favorite of mine. It's been on and off my top 10 list for years. And that is similarly a movie where there is little plot. There's not a lot of plot. It's mostly kids hanging out. And the kids hanging out is profound in and of itself, but not in an overly try-hard way. Which leads us back to the word vibey. I think one of the reasons that Luca is such a breath of fresh air among Pixar and Disney and even just animated kids movies in general right now is that kids movies have become increasingly plot heavy in recent years. I did a video about Raya and the Last Dragon at the start of this year, and I wasn't a huge fan of that film because the stakes were based in saving the world and collecting all these stones to get them together to bring people back from the dead and all this kind of stuff, right? Versus Luca is some kids in a town hanging out and maybe they'll win a Vespa at the end, maybe, right? And that was what was great about it. If you look at a movie like Raya or even other animated movies in recent years, almost every scene is focused on pushing the plot forward. All of them serve some sort of inherent utilitarian plot-related function. And that's fine, right? I mean, scenes serving a function is good. But one of the things that made Luca such a breath of fresh air, and one of the reasons that I think people are saying they vibe with it so much, is that not every scene in Luca is ultimately pushing the plot forward. It's more focused on characters than anything else. So we're obviously talking about movies right now that are relatively plotless. They sort of just vibe. They have a lot of scenes that are focused more on character or world building than plot itself. And Studio Ghibli definitely often falls into that category. But as I was sitting down to record this video, I was going, all right, so what differentiates a movie that just vibes from a movie that has no plot and is ultimately boring, right? I think we've all seen some movies here and there that feel like they don't have a plot and you go, where's this going? Why should I care? But then there are other movies like Luca, I think, that don't seem to have an inherent like, all right, we're getting the stones to save the world, but you're still interested in watching all the way through because you care about the characters and you care about where it's going. I think what it might be, and I'm just figuring this out as I'm saying it, is that like scenes in just vibe movies don't necessarily serve a purpose in the moment, right? When you're watching it, you don't quite know what you're being shown this scene for, but by the end of the movie, you ultimately see why they showed you that scene and how it was relevant to the story that you were experiencing. Some of my favorite scenes in Luca stem from sort of the childlike curiosity and sense of wonder that Luca and Alberto have in the world. You know, there's the scene where Luca is being told, you know, about the stars and the universe and planets by Julia, the girl. And I love that scene because it's like, this has nothing to do with like furthering the plot, but we're just seeing these kids, you know, wonder in amazement at the stars above them. And that's great. By the end of the movie, though, that does end up being relevant because Luca decides to go to school at the end and embraces that sort of curious character that we've seen him manifest throughout the rest of the movie. Another one of the commonalities between Stand By Me and Luca, and another reason that it's different from other recent animated movies, is that the comedy in Luca is not coming from gags or slapstick. It's more coming from the innocence of the characters and the childlike lens through which they see the world. There is just so much childlike joy and whimsy and wonder and naivete threaded throughout this movie, and that's another thing that makes it a lot like Ghibli, specifically Ponyo, where seeing these characters eat noodles together is a greater joy than any spectacle could ever produce. Much like Studio Ghibli, Luca uses animation to transport us back to our childhood and make very simple, mundane things seem miraculous and wonderful. This is sort of a rabbit trail, but another one of the Studio Ghibli-esque touches that Luca embraces is having art during the credits that shows us what the characters do together after the story ends and how their lives continue even after the credits roll. Kiki's Delivery Service and to some extent My Neighbor Totoro do this as well, and Miyazaki was always very keen that his movies should feel like the characters existed long before the movie started and they'll continue existing long after the movie ends. It's funny, by Western animated standards, Luca is one of the more plotless movies in recent years. That's why people have compared it to Ghibli, because it just vibes and it doesn't have to be going anywhere at all the time. And yet, by Studio Ghibli standards, it actually has more plot than the average Ghibli film does, right? It still ends with like a big bicycle race and tournament and everything that we're building towards. And that was fine. I was fine with that. But like Studio Ghibli, usually those movies wouldn't end with something like that. There's also an important conversation, I think, to be had around the concept of stakes. Right? Like I said, in Raya and the Last Dragon, the stakes are the entire world, and that's what kind of desensitized me from the movie. This movie, the stakes are just friendship, and that's what got me interested. And I think as a culture, in many ways, we have actually lost the ability to watch movies in which the stakes are purely relational. And so seeing a movie in which that was the case has been a breath of fresh air for a lot of people. It's one of the reasons that I hope that romantic comedies make a comeback and become significant in the way that they used to be again, rather than like how they are now, which is sort of Netflix originals. If I look at a movie like Before Sunrise or Before Sunset or Before Midnight, the Before trilogy, right? Those are movies that the stakes are just two people, and I care more about that than almost any action movie I've ever seen. Watching Before Sunrise and Before Sunset is like watching Mad Max Fury Road. It's that thrilling for me. And on another note, I think the director of Luca said this, that, in many ways, when you're a kid, the idea of losing a friend or gaining a friend can feel like it's a life or death, end of the world scenario, and Luca does a really good job of depicting that. Anyway, I don't have a ton else to say. I guess I just, Kiki's Delivery Service is one of my favorite movies, definitely my favorite Studio Ghibli movie, because of the relational stakes, the low stakes that are focused more on delivering packages to people than anything else. I also love Stand By Me because of that, and it's also one of my favorite movies. And once again, I don't think that it's that, scenes in this movie don't serve a purpose. They all serve a purpose. They just don't automatically serve a plot-related purpose, and that's what makes it great. I think the thing that I want to know from y'all as I leave this video is, what are some movies that just vibe for you, right? What's a movie that to you feels like it doesn't have an emphasis on plot, and that's what makes it great? I really love those types of movies, and I feel like I've grown in my appreciation of them as I've gotten older, and I'd love to hear some suggestions, maybe things I should watch, or just things that have moved you over the years in that same way. Anyway, I guess this was sort of a short and breezy video in the same vein as Luca itself, but thank you for watching, thanks for sticking around, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Also, the Patreon community has been really flourishing recently. I've really enjoyed posting on there, so, if you're able to chuck in a buck, go join that. It's been awesome. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much. Bye, guys.